There's been a lot of things this year that's caught people off guard, some great teams, great players, but unfortunately there has been some bad that's caught people off guard, like some disappointing seasons from some players I had high expectations from. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's video, because I don't think that we're giving these players enough blame for what's going on this season. Because I have to say, some of the players on this list that we're going to talk about today have really disappointed me. I had some real expectations for them to be, whether it's all-star, great starter, whatever level it is I expected for them to reach this year. They just have completely bombed those expectations, so let's talk about it. But before I go any further with this video, man, if you're not subscribed, what's taking you so long? Hit that subscribe button and press that bell for post notifications to stay up to date with the best content on YouTube, your boy Young Mustard. But without further ado, let's kick things off with our first player. When Zion came into the NBA, he really had the hype of the decade. Like, if you go back to his draft, you haven't seen hype like that since LeBron James. And clearly hype like that is supposed to lead to some generational talent, and Zion Williamson so far has been somewhat of a generational talent. We see the potential when he plays, and even when he's not playing, we can see how it impacts the Pelicans, as right now, despite Ingram missing time as well, they're one of the worst teams in the league. So some of you guys may be asking, why is Zion on this list? We're talking about disappointing players and you're mentioning a guy who hasn't played at all this season. Well, it's because I'm sure you guys have seen the tape, you've seen the pictures of Zion looking fat as hell, and there really is no excuse for that. Like, this is something that we should all collectively as a community agree is wrong, because as much as I like Zion Williamson, there really is still no excuse to get overweight the way he looks right now. The man's isn't even in the top 5 tallest players in the league, but he's definitely in the top 5 heaviest. I mean, there really is no excuse for that. Injuries are probably going to come at some point in his career anyway due to his size and his position, but the best that he could do is keep himself in tip-top shape so he can limit the amount of injuries that come. But he's not doing himself any favors by not being in the best shape that he could possibly be. And it's very obvious based on the reports, and you can kind of tell by just looking at the state of the organization, that Zion isn't very happy with playing for the Pelicans. And I don't blame him. The Pelicans have not been the best run organization over the last decade or so. But nonetheless, that doesn't give you the right to then kind of quit on the team by just letting yourself go with your weight, because you're not only damaging their future, but you're damaging your own. Who's to say that you don't suffer some type of career altering injury while you're out of shape like this? You have to think about stuff like that. But clearly Zion may not care, because the gumbo in New Orleans may just be that good. But let's move on to the next player on this list, and I want to talk about Triple J, because when he first came into the league, I was very interested in the idea of what Jaron Jackson Jr could become, and unfortunately years later we're still stuck on the idea of what he could become. And for a player in his 4th season, already given a $100 million contract extension, it's very disappointing to see the production he's still giving right now at this point in his career. Triple J this year in all aspects has disappointed. When you look at his numbers, it's dropped dramatically in certain areas, averaging career lows in field goal percentage and 3-point percentage, shooting 38% from the field and 34% from 3, and even on the defensive side of the ball, he hasn't been that good, which is really surprising considering that they have Steven Adams in the front court. But I do understand they lost Dillon Brooks, but that still doesn't excuse the Grizzlies to be the 29th ranked defense in the entire NBA. This is a guy that was supposed to be the next Anthony Davis on the defensive side of the ball, but so far he just looks like a knockoff Black Porzingis, because he cannot get it together offensively or defensively. I mean, the guy's a fake shooter. Like I said earlier, defensively he's been lacking this year, and considering what the Grizzlies did this offseason, it's fairly disappointing because they were banking on him to improve. They moved on from Jonas Valanciunas because he was somewhat of a black hole in the offense, and they were relying on you and Ja to be that duo for this team moving forward. Ja has held his side of the bargain. Where's your side? Obviously it's not looking good. So Triple J needs to ball out, not only for his sake but for the sake of the Grizzlies. But speaking of sakes, that brings us to Jayson Tatum, because my goodness, for Christ's sake, please start playing well, JT. Tatum this year had completely high ass expectations. People thought he was going to be an MVP candidate this year. That's what people were saying, because coming into this season, I viewed Tatum as a top 15 player in the league, but right now he's not even playing like a top 25 player. He takes bad shots consistently, as he thinks he's Kobe Bryant with that sidestep step that gets zero separation. The guy is shooting like what, 23 shots to average 23 points? It's insane how inefficient he is right now. Like, I don't even have to read his numbers. I'm sure if you've been watching the games, that's enough for you right there. He completely ignores some of his teammates at times, and sure, I do think the ball hog stuff is overblown, but there is definitely some truth to that. Once he puts his head down and he starts to dribble, does his sidestep three, he just doesn't see anybody anymore. And trust me, there are more issues to the Celtics than Jayson Tatum's play. I'm not blaming him because there are a lot of role players on that team that definitely deserve some fingers pointed at them. I'm talking about Marcus Smart. But for a player that we had expectations to potentially be a top 10 player by the end of this season, man, talk about bombed expectations. That's what Jayson Tatum has done so far this year. But let's move on to another J that I want to talk about, and that is the one in New York. Yes, you guessed it, Julius Randle, or as my guy J Smooth says on Hoop Concessions, Julius Randle. My goodness, he fooled all of you guys, but he didn't fool me, because I watched Julius Randle last year and I saw him do some things that I was like, man, that ain't Julius Randle, that's an imposter, because this guy was making shots that he will never hit ever again. I'm talking that sidestep three, the fadeaways, contested shots, open shots, it didn't matter. The guy was making everything last year, and I knew something was iffy. I had to go out on a limb in the offseason, and I said that, hey, Julius Randle's good, but he ain't that good. I think he's gonna go back down to earth eventually this season, and look and behold, this year he's gone back down to earth. As on both sides of the ball, he has not been that good at all. Defensively, he's been one of the worst at his position, as even the Knicks starting lineup has been the worst starting lineup in the history of basketball on the defensive side of the ball, as they own the worst defensive rating of all time from any starting lineup in NBA history. And I know that's not all on Julius Randle. Kemba Walker coming into the fold definitely contributed towards that, but Julius Randle has never been that great of a defender. He's undersized at his position anyways, and in years that he's been on great defenses, he's been protected with good defenders around him. And when you look at his pure on-off numbers, the guy is not helping matters at all on either side of the ball. As on the defensive side of the ball, when he's on the court, the Knicks have a defensive rating of 113.2, and when he's off the court, the defensive rating actually gets better and goes all the way down to a 100.8. So defensively, he's just been a pure negative for the New York Knicks this year. Now offensively, that's really where the disappointment lies. When he's on the court, they have an offensive rating of 108, and when he's off the court, it shoots all the way up to a 119, and that's not surprising to me at all. When you look at his numbers, the guy is shooting 41% from the field and 34% from three. He has a true shooting percentage just short of 52% right now. It's not surprising to me that the numbers back up the fact that he's been a negative on both sides of the ball. And I think all of this is just due to the expectations that we gave Julius Randle because of a year that was a fluke. I mean, it was a great season, don't get me wrong, but Julius Randle is not at the level of a player to where we can expect that kind of production every single year from him. Unless you're a Knicks fan or you work for the Knicks front office, because they obviously thought it was a good idea to give him over $100 million in the offseason. I mean, the man took that money and ran to start playing like garbage. Knicks fans, I do not feel bad for you. You knew what you were getting yourself into. But moving on to the final player, and the guy who influenced this entire video, I have to say, it's De'Aaron Fox. Now, if you remember in this offseason, I made a video comparing De'Aaron Fox to Ja Morant, and my goodness, has that video aged poorly so far this year. I mean, talk about a disappointment. De'Aaron Fox this year has been that, a disappointment, because coming after a season where he averaged 25 points a game along with 7 assists on 48% shooting from the field, I expected big things from D Fox this year. Not saying I expected him to average 30 and 10 and take the Kings to the playoffs, because that's almost impossible, but to give me 19, 6 and 4 on 41% shooting from the field, 23% shooting from three, 71% at the free throw line, and 48% true shooting, that is horrific for any starting point guard in the league standards. D Fox is better than this, and he's been turning the clock a little bit lately, and hopefully he can maintain doing that, but my goodness, it doesn't look good so far, because even though the Kings are a little bit trash, it isn't like he's completely bereft of talent on that roster. Harrison Barnes has been playing great on both sides of the ball this year. Halliburton has picked up where he left off in his rookie year. Buddy Hield is still pretty trash on defense, but he is shooting 41% from three on nearly 11 attempts a game. He's something you can work with, and he's coming off the bench, which is a plus for them. Tatum, and even Richaun Holmes this year is having a career season averaging 14 and 11. If there really is any explanation as for why the Kings are struggling this year with a below 500 record, as much as it pains me to admit this, De'Aaron Fox might be the reason why. I mean, teams are going under his screens completely, they're not giving him any attention at the three-point line, and yeah, his three-point shooting has never been that great for him, but at least in the past he had that mid-range pull-up despite it being a bit inconsistent at times. Right now, he's not even hitting that. So if you can't knock down your jump shots that the defense is giving you wide open, then the only thing that's separating you offensively from Ben Simmons is confidence. And this Kings team deserves better than that from you, especially considering the money they gave you a couple of off seasons ago. But that concludes this video. If any of you guys disagree, let me know down below in the comment section. Do not forget to drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell for post notifications. It's your boy Young Mustard signing out. Y'all stay safe and have a blessed day. Peace.